are really familiar with Kirkpatrick Phillips anyway and his work? You in the room? Good. So this model has been put together, and Donald Kirkpatrick started to look at his work around evaluation back in 1959. So this is not new. This is not straight out of the cupboard stuff. This has been around a bit. What I would say is, in reality and in practice though, the application of that is challenging for organisations and has been. So, but he looked at a series of articles. He started publishing some information around evaluation for training programmes, and he started to look at it in terms of 4 levels, and very much that was starting to go outside the sort of traditional evaluation, which was about the faculty itself. You know, how many people did we have on a course? How many people were we able to push through a programme, which is the type of evaluation that we might be familiar with in some areas, and can we tick the box for people? And starting to look at evaluation at 4 different levels. And I think it's fair to say that when we look at the first 2 levels, that most of us will be able to say, do you know, I do some of that stuff already. Level 1, which is about reaction of student. And this is very generic language that we're using here, top level first of all. So Kirkpatrick Phillips' model says that we need to assess and measure the reaction of people in the learning environment, whatever that happens to be, what they thought about it, typically our happy sheets. And we're going to expand this in a moment to see in more detail what might sit under some of these areas. The second area is learning itself, so the degree to which I've been able to take what I've learned in the classroom or the other learning environments, maybe in a blended learning approach, and apply that skill, that new practice. The resulting increase in knowledge or capability. Level 3 is about behaviour. So it's very much about looking at what shift have we seen as a result of that intervention in sustainable knowledge, because sustainable knowledge delivers a behavioural change, or it should do. So if I'm now more effective at doing something because of the result of what I've been through, whether that's a leadership programme, whether that is a programme around customer service focus, or whether it's sales, or whether it's talent management, any of these things, and sometimes some of these are much more difficult to measure than others, then a consistent application of that new learning and knowledge should start to result in behavioural change. And those behavioural changes should be able to be measured. I'm saying the word should at the moment because we're going to start to look at some of those things that might be able to identify whether they are or not. Level 4 though, which is about results and outcome. And this is the impact on the business of that performance change. So in simple language, it's the degree to which we've either increased revenue or reduced cost. And ultimately that means in terms of increasing profitability. And that's why I talk about the third sector. There's some other drivers there. Most organisations in this room, certainly our own organisation as a non-for-profit, is absolutely focused at the moment about doing better for less, about reducing cost of operation. Does anybody say that that doesn't happen for them in their business in a minute? Good. But it's extremely challenging because we're being asked at the moment to develop the capability of our people with a sustainable output in a way where we have less or reduced resources. So to a degree, the very fact that we've got all of you voluntarily in the room today means that it is a focus for you, it has to be. Effects on the business or environment resulting from the trainees' performance, that's students' performance. I'll talk a bit about what social return investment is at the moment as well. So again, a bit of a straw poll for a minute. You all identified that your knowledge was about 2 to 6 and possibly up to anywhere between 0 and 5 in terms of application. For those of you who are applying it, how many of you all feel you're quite good at doing this bit here, level 1? Okay, good, so majority. What about level 2? What do we think? Okay, some? Yeah. Level 3? A bit. So yeah, sometimes, yeah. And it would be great to share some of your experiences with that when we come to it as well. Level 4? A little. Try. Do you know, the fact that you're actually again trying is great, and I'd love to draw out again what you're doing shortly and how you're finding it. So I think it is fair to say that levels 3 and 4 are our most challenging areas. And sometimes we may look at level 1 and think, do you know, that's fairly straightforward. As we work through things at the moment, I'm going to hopefully help to see how these bricks build up, because our ability to do really good evaluation at level 1 actually underpins our ability to do level 4 as well. One question again, I'm sorry I've got lots of questions to ask you this morning, but it might be, this is a question for you to pose within your teams for a minute, and a couple of minutes only on this. Many of you will have particular projects that you're currently working on or have worked on, or others it will be more if and when we get our next project we want to do this. But from a practical point of view, it would be good to identify just a project or a couple of themes of projects, whether that's a leadership development programme or it's around managing change or whatever, that you've got current in your business that we could use as some of the live stuff as we start to work on that. So can I give you 5 minutes discussion time to see whether you can come up with a mutual agreement as to one you might want to pick for your table. It doesn't matter if they're the same as another group at this stage. A current type of project where you might want to take, where we start doing the practical application. So, in terms of working through, just a few open questions to get us thinking then. You've started to give me already some of the reasons why we might be wanting to do this, but why bother? I mean, why should we even begin to evaluate training in the first place? What do we think? Cost. Yes. So, cost in terms of the programme. So I'm sorry about this. You're going to have to be flexible and mobile today, aren't you?
Yeah, it's why you have to justify why you're spending money.
Yeah, so justifying the money. I'm going to use simple language today on this because it becomes easier for me then. So we need to justify the money.
Justify the time as well.
And the time. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Make sure you do the right things.
The right things. Yeah. And I think that is really critical because we've all been in experiences, and I've done that as well when I first started running a training organisation, when you do things your clients ask you to do because that's what they ask you to do, not because it's the right thing for them. Sometimes we have to look at that. So, doing the right things. Why else might we bother to do this?
Last time you had a strategic strategy.
Yes. Yeah, so to align with the strategy of the organisation. Yeah, very much so. And that also does beg the question that we need to know what that organisational strategy is in the first place, which sometimes can be challenging. That's great. Anything additional that we're thinking? That's fine. This is the whole environment to have cynical thinking.
Sometimes it can slightly come across as justifying revenue.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And particularly, and we've had a lot of pressure in terms of reduced resources in learning development departments. The justification of either doing that or outsourcing it, yeah, we need to justify that we're actually adding value to the business. I'm going to put it up there because these are real pressures that we've got on us, partners. We're justifying our existence because you might say, if it's not having any impact, why not just save the money? And particularly, those of you in the private sector as well will recognise 18 months ago when everybody froze and they really didn't know what was happening next in terms of restructure, losing people. Then there was probably 6 months where nobody did anything. And from point of view, it froze. I'm not saying that's right or wrong because you certainly can't start to look at ROI when you're in a constantly changing environment. You have to have a level of stability there. But yeah, that's a key piece. One of our biggest challenges is when we don't necessarily have the control on how training is delivered through the business, particularly if it's sourced in within departments. And whilst I do not suggest that we should measure everything, I think it's key today to understand that when we're looking at ROI, we have to decide in an organisation what and how we're going to measure it. And we might decide it on deciding how many of those boxes we can tick. For example, how much time does it take and how much does it cost us? How much is this part of the overall strategy of the organisation? Because if we've got one individual being sent on a project management course because they need to increase their skills and it costs them £299, the cost of you evaluating that is actually going to be more than the benefit that the evaluation is going to bring. So you may question whether you actually would bother in that instance. On the other hand, if you're bringing in a whole suite of project management skills into the business to do, then you probably would evaluate it. So it is horses for courses, but it's about helping manage devolved budgets as well, isn't it? Okay. I think that There may well be more that we can add to it, but we're going to move on. I think we've probably convinced ourselves that there is a purpose for doing it, and we should be bothering. That's one thing. And what I'm going to ask us to do now, between now and coffee break, is go back into our groups. I am going to support you through some of the benchmarking stuff around the 4 levels, but I want to give you an opportunity just to come up with what you think some of the things could be. And I'm using, again, simple language at each of these 4 levels. So when we're looking at level 1, we've already started to talk about Caroline, is it? Yeah. Caroline talked us a great example of where even the happy sheets are not working or don't always provide us with the information that we need. So coming back to our 4 levels here, what we're going to do is go around the table. This table here will be level 1. You've got the nice easy one, level 2, level 3 and level 4.
Thanks a bunch. So kind.
Well, it was because you had the 1 to 8 rating over there. I thought that we'll see how we can go with that one. But I'd like you just to think for a moment in your groups as to what sort of things might we be doing in an organisation to measure at those 4 levels. Do not worry if you feel that your thoughts and thinking need to be expounded, because that's what today's all about, and we'll start to do that. But I'd like us, because quite often the creative energy that you have in your groups will produce a lot of the things that should be in there anyway. So what are the sorts of things at level 1 we should be doing? You've got some support material in your workbook and also the handout that I gave you. But this is about translating that into words and language that feel right within your own organisations as well. What should we be doing to look at the transferable learning, the resulting increase in knowledge or capacity, or capability rather? At level 3, what sort of things should we be doing to measure the extent of behaviour and capability improvement? And finally, at level 4, as I say, we are going to explore it in a lot more detail, and we will be going into quite a bit of detail on the level 4 calculations as we go through the day. So this is really a top-level look at what those things should be before you take your coffee break. Does that make sense, everybody? Again, if you want to point someone else to give you feedback, and then we'll just share what your findings are on that for a moment.